But this is a tweet from an account called Inquisitive Bird. It says, large demographic shift in American TV series staff. According to Writers Guild of America West data, between 2011 and 2020, staff writers moved from 35% to 63% women and 72% to 44% white.
Well, these stats are directly from the 2022 report from the Writers Guild of America, and I think that they wouldn't lie about it because they see decreasing the amount of whites and men in writing staff is something to brag and boast about. So they want everyone to know that they are pushing white men out of Hollywood. They are purging white straight men out of writers' rooms. And I feel like the content is suffering for it.
I think all of us understand. Let's look at some of these numbers off the bat. So back in 2011, for women, the staff writing percentage was 35.4%. In 2020, that jumped up to 63%. That's a 27% boost. And these numbers go down the line here. Story editor, executive editor, co-producer, producer, supervising producer, co-executive producer, and executive producer or showrunner. And you will see upper single digit or double digit spikes in percentage change upward trajectory for all women. And the same is true for BIPOC and so Black, Indigenous, person of color.
Yes.
If you don't know what that means.
Everyone who's not white, basically.
And then if you look at it, it's very clear with all of the red stats, the numbers that are red there show a decrease in number for men. And then for white individuals, it is negative decrease across the board for everything except for supervising producer, which there's exactly a 1.2% gap between men and women, obviously. So the men took over more supervising producer roles and women decreased. But they had gains in all of the other ones. Here was this for the men. So staff writers used to be 64% men, now 36. Story editors, 61%, now 39. That's a 28.4 and 22.4 percentage drop, respectively. Really, what's funny is like the number one area where you see the least change is in executive producer and showrunner, because we did a thing a while ago where we talked about this. Where we're like, look, that top 1% to 2% of writers and directors, the ones who have all the clout, the ones who have been making movies and television show for years, they're not going to see a drop. They're going to continue to get work. The dudes from Better Call Saul, who came from Breaking Bad, who came from the X-Files before that, all of these guys, your Steven Spielbergs are still going to be producing movies.
Sure.
All of these people, they're still going to be making stuff. Only a 9% drop there. Everything else for men was in the double digits as far as drops in their actual representation between 2011 and 2020. Now, when it comes to like Black, Indigenous, person of color, and white, you see, again, double-digit drops in every category, and you have to ask why that is. These types of changes over it's about a 9-year change, right? That's a very significant amount of change in a relatively short period of time. A decade isn't that long.
And we don't have the stats for this right now, but I'm sure if you extended this to the present day, to 2024, the drops that you see in white men would be even more dramatic. Yep. And Steve Saylor replied to this and said, could a young Larry David get hired today? Yes. Are Jewish men considered part of the white male category? And someone said, are Larry David and other Jewish men classified as white? Steve Saylor said, well, what do you think the black ladies who work in HR say? Besides saying, repeatedly in a flat tone, as the Jewish man tries to explain why he should be counted as non-white for the DEI quota. Essentially, the difference doesn't really matter to them. And a young Larry David could not get work in 2024 Hollywood, nope. Despite the fact that he's made a name for himself in today's world. Like, he was grandfathered into the system. But someone said, do men watch TV anymore? I don't watch anything outside of the occasional football match. Yet my wife watches easily 15 hours a week of Netflix. Is this because the consumer demographic has changed?
Or did the content change?
Or did the content change?
Just the consumers changed.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that Larry David wouldn't be able to get hired in 2024.
I think the other problem that they're not pointing out, and this is what I always talk about when it comes to action movies, that stuff made for men, when it's done in a way that's actual, real to the human experience, will also appeal to women. Action movies are the best example of this. So men want to watch a movie about a dude saving a woman and then saving the day. Women also want to watch a movie about a dude saving a woman and saving the day. Mm-hmm. That appeals to them. Now, we have seen, we saw with Madam Web, the women didn't come out for Madam Web. It was men, it was dads and 12-year-old boys. That was your target demographic. That was the demographic that really came out for you. Dads and preteens were the ones that came out for you. And they were talking about the new Sony project where they said that they're retooling the writer's room so that they can make it for a more male skewing audience. The comic book movie demographic was always a more male skewing audience. And outside of Aquaman, which is like the one example where it actually skewed female because Jason Momoa was shirtless the whole time, you know, that men drag their girlfriends to these movies. And there you have it.
They kind of needlessly problematized the fact that superhero movies and action movies are going to skew male in the audience anyway. And it wouldn't surprise me then that the writers' rooms would be filled with people who are also fans of that content.
So 2011 is when they started this comparison. Well, I thought this was funny. It says, why are all the top shows that are streamed almost always old? Mm-hmm. Gee, I wonder. Here they are. Suits. What year did it start? 2011. What year did it end? 2019. Bluey. That's a more recent example.
As for the shows that are listed here as the most streamed acquired shows, the ones that are no longer airing are Suits. Obviously, that was the top streaming show.
NCIS.
Last year. And then they have...
NCIS is still on the air. But here's the thing.
NCIS, but that barely counts. Big Bang Theory, Gilmore Girls, Friends, and Supernatural.
Heartland is still on the air, I believe. Yes. Okay, so...
But most of these started in the 2000s. Mm-hmm. And the Cocomelon one is just like people plopping their toddler in front of the TV and leaving it on repeat.
I mean, isn't Bluey kind of the same thing? For
Bluey,
in a
Bluey
way?
too. Yeah, and that's on Disney Plus.
Here's the thing, guys. Hollywood, they love the nostalgia of it, but they don't want to create content now that will become nostalgic later. I made a tweet about this earlier that basically said, like, look, the next generation of comfort shows will have nothing to do with Hollywood. It will be Gen Z and Gen Alpha with comfort YouTubers. They'll go back and watch old YouTube videos from people. Like, people talk like they were over the weekend. There was a strong discourse going on about Starship Troopers and what your political philosophy says about the movie Starship Troopers. Well, people were referencing an old Sargon video in which he discussed that. The next generation will have comfort YouTube channels that they go back and watch old content from. This era, the era of evergreen TV that you can go put on because it soothes you because you don't want to actually assault your brain with trying something new, which a lot of people point out that is more in line, like more women do that than men. Like, we'll just put on something on repeat. They talk about how it's actually something that helps if you have like severe anxiety, is you put on a show you've watched timeless, an unknown amount of times because knowing how it ends is soothing.
I guess.
Right?
They said that like fans of Friends have found comfort in the show's familiar jokes and the studio audience. Even before streaming, when the show was on reruns, watching something comforting can take away the stress involved in infinite choices at our disposal and the consequential energy drain.
Exactly.
So it's draining to just constantly scroll on Netflix trying to find the thing you want to watch. You'd rather just go back to the thing that you already like.
I thought what was interesting about this is outside of the two examples that were animated, every show on here is 2011 or earlier in when it started.
Mm-hmm. And they also ranked the top 10 original streaming shows, like Ted Lasso, Love is Blind. That's just a reality show. They have The Mandalorian on here. A lot of these shows just aren't culturally relevant. And in 10 or 20 years, they're not going to be nostalgia shows.
I will say that shows like The Lincoln Lawyer, or even, I remember I was arguing with somebody on here about Will Trent. like shows like those have the possibility of perhaps one day, or like the most recent version of Magnum PI, which went 6 seasons, or Hawaii Five-0. Those have the ability to do that, but like the Magnum PI show started in like 2018. But even that's based off, that and Hawaii Five-0 were based off shows from the 60s and 70s. So why is it that just 20 years ago, they were able to create, and this is why I always talk about why network TV is so important. Most of these shows end up being ones, they're not the 16 episode series. They're not the 8 episode miniseries. They're 22 episodes a season with very little in the way of overarching plot. It's just every week is a new episode. You watch it, the episode is done. The other reason that's good, not just because it's a comfort show, is that, look, I don't always have the time or want to watch something that's 12 episodes long and requires me to watch all 12 episodes to know what's going on. Right? Sometimes you only have time. If you're busy, you only have time to watch maybe an hour, maybe 2 of television a night. If you even that, you just want to watch something that's 45 minutes at most, get a whole story. That's what you did. Then you go to bed.
Yeah, I can't stand how series these days, they have a season that's 8 to 12 episodes, and every episode could possibly be a feature-length film. It's just too much. It's asking too much of the audience, especially for the content just not being good enough to justify that time commitment.
Just the amount of shows that Hollywood used to be able to make, like, that could hold a lot. Like, they don't need to be evergreen as far as like the storytelling, right? Like I told you, I watched that show from Limitless, and it's got references to Vine. Right? But the show has such fun writing that I can watch it in 2024 and enjoy it.
A lot of people criticize DEI policies because, you know, with affirmative action, you're hiring people based on their identities and not their talent. So obviously the writing quality is going to go down when you do that. But I think that the root issue here is maybe white straight men are better at writing stories. Maybe they have a better propensity toward writing these fun shows that end up being popular. Maybe they're just better at writing.
I don't know if it's necessarily that they're better at writing. It's that they're not going to be expected to tell stories that only speak to their life experience, because nobody wants to hear generally.
Because nobody coddled them.
Exactly. So but also a lot of these other writers are being hired specifically for their life experience, which is very limited. You're only going to reach a certain amount of people by speaking about something that was unique to you, because only so many people will have had life experiences that are analogous to that. Whereas other writers, and I've mentioned this before about Christopher Priest, the comic book writer, who said like he used to be hired to write all sorts of characters. Well, then once like Marvel started doing all these policies where black writers can only write black characters, then he's only supposed to write Blade, or he's only supposed to write Black Panther. He wants to write Daredevil. He wants to write these other characters. Good writers can write on a broad scope of topics.
Sure. I think that when it comes to justifying the existence of DEI policies and affirmative action initiatives, they really took the mask off in the past few years, because before, when you would ask, like, why does affirmative action need to exist? They would tell you that they were trying to make the system more meritocratic, right? Because they would claim that a lot of the talent of these marginalized groups was getting ignored. So now that we have affirmative action policies, we can finally make this system perfectly meritocratic. But ever since, I think, 2020, they did away with that excuse and are just openly saying, we don't like white men and we don't want to work with them. And we want black women, essentially, to tell their stories because they deserve to have the microphone right now. They're not going to claim that they're after they're trying to achieve a meritocratic system. Yeah. That's not even the pretense anymore. They did away with that pretense and fully admitting that it's about purging white men from the industry and bringing black women into their place.
Male and pale is stale.
Exactly.
We've been told.
They did away with the whole pretense that this was to reward people for their talent and hard work.
Thanks for watching. Listen to full episodes of Pop Culture Crisis on Spotify.
Keep up with us on social media and make sure you subscribe and ring that bell so you never miss the show. Bye, guys.